You know, some moments don't just change your life. They split it, clean down the middle, into before and after. And once that line is crossed, you can never walk it back. It's been 2 years. 2 full years since that night. But somehow I can still feel it in my bones. Like a cold draft that never quite leaves the room. Like a whisper that lingers in your ear long after the words are gone. I didn't plan for it. I didn't even see it coming. That's the part that messes with me the most. You think the worst days of your life will come with a warning, like thunder before a storm. But sometimes they sneak in wearing familiar faces. My husband wasn't home that night. He was away again. Work trip. Usual story. He always seemed to be somewhere else. Physically, emotionally. I'd gotten used to it. Or, at least I told myself I had. I put the kids to bed early. The house was quiet, too quiet. You know the kind of silence that feels loud? Where every creak in the floorboards feels like it's trying to tell you something. Yeah, that kind. I remember I was curled up on the couch, wrapped in this old blanket he never liked. The kind that smells like comfort. And loneliness. TV was on, but I wasn't watching. Just staring. Waiting for the hours to pass. Then, knock knock. I thought it was the neighbors. Or maybe a package. But when I opened the door, it was him. David. My husband's best friend. He smiled that boyish smile he always had, holding a bag of groceries and a flashlight. Figured you might need a little backup, he said. Storm's getting bad out there. I should have shut the door. Should have said thank you and left it at that. But I didn't, because, in that moment, I needed someone. Anyone. To see me. To hear me. To sit in the silence with me. So I let him in. And what happened next? God. I never saw it coming. Not from him. Not from me. But before I take you there, let me ask you something. Have you ever been so lonely that even the wrong touch felt like love? Because if you've never been there, I hope you never do. But if you have, then you already know how this story ends. And why it still haunts me. This is not a story about excuses. It's not about blame. It's about the human heart. About silence that goes too long. And comfort that comes from the wrong place. So, if you're ready to go there, to the places no one talks about, stick with me. Because once I start, you won't be able to look away. And hey, if you believe in real, raw stories that pull back the curtain on what it means to be human, subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. You won't want to miss the true stories that hide behind closed doors. When I first met my husband, it felt like the kind of love you read about in books. The kind that makes your stomach flutter and your cheeks ache from smiling too much. He was funny, ambitious, attentive. And for a while, he saw me. Really saw me. But things change. Or maybe people do. Somewhere between late-night feedings and early morning meetings. Between bills and birthdays and barely enough time to breathe. He drifted. Slowly, silently. Until one day, I looked over at the man in my bed and realized he wasn't there. Not really. Not for me. He still provided. Still came home. Still asked how the kids were doing. But when it came to me, it was like I'd become furniture. Something he passed by, not something he connected with. I stayed home with our 2 little ones. Most days, I was too tired to feel anything. But every now and then, a sharp loneliness would hit me in the chest out of nowhere. Like I was disappearing in my own life. I didn't want grand gestures. Just presence. Just someone to ask how I was doing and wait long enough to hear the answer. That's where David came in. He and my husband had been best friends since college. David was always around for birthdays, barbecues, the occasional weekend game night. He had this ease about him. Warm eyes. The kind of laugh that made you feel like you were in on something, even if you didn't know what it was. He'd been through a messy divorce the year before. No kids. Said he regretted not building a family when he had the chance. He started checking in more. Helping with the kids. Bringing over groceries. Fixing little things around the house my husband said he'd get to, but never did. At first, it felt innocent, kind, appreciated. And maybe it was. But I started to notice the way he looked at me. Not in a creepy way. Just longer, softer, like he was really listening. When I'd talk about how exhausted I was, he'd nod like he understood. Like he actually heard me. When I laughed at something silly, he'd smile in this quiet way that made my chest feel warm. Like I wasn't invisible. I didn't think anything of it then. At least I told myself I didn't. But looking back, that house, that perfect little house on a perfect little street in our perfect little neighborhood, it was hollow. It looked fine on the outside. Clean, organized, alive. But on the inside, it was quiet. Too quiet. Like a museum after closing. Everything in its place. Nothing truly alive. The kids filled some of that space. Their laughter, their chaos, their tiny little hands reaching for mine. But once they were tucked in, it was just me. Me and the silence. And every night, I'd lie in bed next to a man who didn't ask how my day was, who didn't even turn to face me anymore. And then there was David, knocking at the door, showing up with groceries, or tools, or stories to make me laugh. Always with a smile. Always with time. Always seeing me. I didn't know it then, but something had already started. Not with words. Not with touches. But with glances. And the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, it feels full. Heavy. Like it's waiting for something to happen. He left again that morning. Just like all the other times. Kiss on the cheek. Quick goodbye. No eye contact. No softness. Just a suitcase, a schedule, and silence. Back by Sunday, he said, grabbing his keys. Like I was the babysitter. Like he forgot I was his wife. I nodded. Didn't say a word. What was the point? I went through the motions: breakfast, school run, laundry, dishes. The sky darkened early that day. You know the kind of sky that feels heavy, like it's holding something back? It was one of those. By evening, the wind was howling. Rain beating down like angry fists against the windows. The lights flickered once, then died. I stood there in the hallway, holding a candle. The kids were already asleep upstairs. And I felt exposed, alone, like the whole house had exhaled and left me standing in the dark. Then, knock knock. My heart jumped. I crept to the door, half expecting it to be a branch, or the wind, or nothing at all. But it was him. David. Soaked from the rain, holding a bag of groceries in one hand and a flashlight in the other. Didn't want you stuck in the dark alone, he said. Voice calm, like he knew I needed something before I did. I laughed. I think it was more nerves than anything. I told him to come in. He kicked off his shoes, dripped water all over the entryway. We lit a few candles, sat at the kitchen table. The glow made everything feel softer. Safer. He poured 2 glasses of wine, one he brought over from his place. Said it was an old favorite he used to share with his ex. We laughed about how terrible the label looked. The storm raged outside. But in here, it felt like a pocket of calm. The kind of moment you don't expect to mean anything until it does. We talked. Not about the weather. Not about errands or work. About life. About feeling invisible. About how some nights are so quiet, they scream. About how tired I was of holding it all together with no one holding me. And he listened. Not like most people do, just waiting for their turn to speak. No. He heard me. Every word. And something about that. God, it cracked something open. For the first time in so long, I felt seen. Not as a mom. Not as a wife. Just as me. We didn't touch. Didn't say anything inappropriate. But when the power finally blinked back on and he stood to leave, he reached for my shoulder. Just a light touch. Reassuring. Grateful. But his hand stayed there. 1 second too long. His thumb brushed against my collarbone, almost without meaning to. I froze. My heart It didn't race. It remembered. Because in that one small, quiet second, my body soaked in something I hadn't felt in so long: tenderness, gentleness, connection. He said goodnight, stepped out into the rain, and the door clicked shut behind him. I stood there, hand still on my shoulder where his fingers had been. Not moving, not breathing. I told myself it was nothing. But deep down, my heart had already memorized that touch. That night, I couldn't sleep. I climbed into bed, pulled the blanket up to my chin, and stared at the ceiling like it had answers. But my thoughts wouldn't stop. Was I just lonely? Was I overthinking it? Maybe it was nothing. Maybe he touches everyone like that. Maybe I imagined the way his thumb moved. Maybe it wasn't anything at all. But it felt like something, and that was the problem. Because I liked it. And the second I admitted that to myself, even in the silence of my own mind, this wave of guilt hit me like a punch to the chest. Not because I did anything wrong. We didn't kiss. We didn't even flirt. We just talked. But still, why did it feel like I had crossed a line? I thought about my husband. How he'd barely looked at me before leaving. How he didn't even notice I'd cut my hair last week. 6 inches gone. Not a word. David noticed. The moment he walked in that night, he looked at me and said, "Something's different about you. You look refreshed." And it wasn't what he said, it was how he said it. Like I mattered. Like I was visible. I rolled over, squeezed my eyes shut, and told myself to stop. Told myself I was tired. Told myself to be better than this. I didn't want attention from anyone else. I didn't want to feel like I needed it. But the truth is, I was starving. Starving for connection. For affection. For someone to ask how I was doing and stay in the room long enough to hear the answer. And David. He stayed. I reached for my phone. Not to call anyone, just. I don't know. Maybe to feel less alone. No missed calls. No messages from my husband. No good night. No, how's the storm? Nothing. But there was one new message. David, let me know if you need anything. You don't have to go through this alone. My chest tightened. It was simple. Kind. Safe. And somehow exactly what I needed. But I didn't reply. I just stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard, heart pounding in my throat. Because what do you say when someone finally sees you and your whole world is built on being unseen? I put the phone down, laid back, listened to the rain tapping on the windows like it had something to say. And somewhere in the space between guilt and longing, I knew this wasn't over. Whatever this was. Because once you've been seen, truly seen, it's almost impossible to go back to being invisible. After that night, something shifted. Not out loud. Not in any obvious way. But underneath it all, something had changed. David started coming by more often. Always with a reason. He brought over batteries for the kids' toys. Fixed the loose hinge on the back door. Helped me lift boxes I'd been meaning to move for months. He played with the kids like he had all the time in the world. Listened to them. Laughed with them. Taught my son how to tie his shoes again because he forgot. I told myself he was just being kind. That's all it was. But kindness started to feel dangerous. The way his hand rested at the small of my back when he walked past me. The way his eyes lingered a second too long when I laughed. The way he hugged me goodbye, just a little tighter than necessary. Just a breath too long. I didn't pull away. That's what I remember most. I didn't want to pull away, and that scared me. I started getting dressed in the mornings again. Not just yoga pants and a messy bun, but jeans, perfume, mascara, lip gloss I hadn't touched in over a year. When I caught my reflection in the mirror, I told myself it was for me. Self-care. That's what they call it now, right? But deep down, I knew who I was hoping would notice. One night, after the kids were tucked in and the house had gone still, David stayed a little longer. We sat at the kitchen table, a bottle of wine between us, candles flickering just like that stormy night. We laughed. Really laughed. That belly-deep kind of laughter that leaves you a little breathless. The kind that makes you forget for a second that your heart has been starving. And in that moment, with nothing but the soft hum of the fridge and the sound of his laugh in my ears, he reached over, gently, without saying a word. He brushed a loose strand of hair from my face. And I froze. Not because I was scared, but because I wanted to lean in. I didn't. But I didn't move away either. He looked at me like he was waiting for something. Like I was holding the answer to a question he hadn't asked yet. I stood up, said I should get to bed. He nodded, said goodnight. But as he walked out the door, my heart stayed behind. Sitting in that chair, staring at his empty glass. Every time he left, I told myself that was the last time. The last late-night talk. The last too-long hug. The last time I let my mind wander where it shouldn't. And yet, I waited for him. Every time. I found myself hoping he'd knock. Hoping he'd find another excuse to stop by. To check the pipes. To return a borrowed book. To just see me. And the worst part? I started resenting the silence again when he wasn't around. The kind of silence that makes you feel like you don't exist. And then, the day everything unraveled, started just like any other. It was a Friday. I remember because I had just washed the sheets. Something about clean sheets always made me feel like I was doing okay, like I had control over something, even when everything else felt like it was unraveling. My husband was supposed to come home that evening. That was the plan. But around noon, he texted, "Flight's been delayed. Won't be back till tomorrow. Sorry. No, I miss you. No, how are the kids?" Just a schedule update. Like I was a receptionist in his life. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I put the phone down, took a deep breath, and kept folding laundry. A few hours later, there was a knock on the door. And I didn't even have to ask who it was. David. This time, he brought takeout, my favorite. Said he figured I could use a break. The kids were already next door with our neighbor, having a little sleepover with her girls. They'd been begging for it all week. So for once, the house was quiet in a different kind of way. Not lonely, just soft. We sat on the couch with our dinner, plates in our laps. Talked about nothing at first, shows we were watching, food we wanted to try, stupid childhood memories. And then the rain started. Not a storm, just a gentle drizzle. One of those rains that wraps itself around the house like a blanket. We didn't turn on the lights. The room was lit by the soft glow of the lamp by the bookshelf, casting shadows that made everything feel slower. Safer. We weren't touching. We weren't even sitting that close. But something was happening. I could feel it. Like the air between us had gotten heavier. Thicker. The space was there, but it felt electric. I looked at him. He looked at me. And I swear we both knew. I said something, I can't even remember what it was, and we both laughed. Not loud. Just the soft, breathy kind of laugh that left us sitting in silence afterward. And then he leaned in. It wasn't rushed. Wasn't forced. He moved slowly. Gave me time to stop him. Gave me space to choose. And I didn't move. I let him kiss me. And for a moment, everything else disappeared. The years of feeling invisible. The ache I carried in my chest every time my husband looked right through me. The guilt. The fear. All of it went quiet. It was just warmth. Just closeness. Just breath and skin and this terrifying, beautiful sense of being wanted. And then, the door slammed. I jumped. David pulled away, his eyes wide. And there, standing in the doorway, was my husband. Soaking wet from the rain. Holding his keys. Silent. Still. His eyes moved from me, to David, to the untouched food on the coffee table. And then back to me. He didn't yell. Didn't say a word. He just stared. Like he didn't recognize what he was looking at. Like I had become someone else entirely. Right there in front of him. Then he turned around. Walked out. The door closed behind him. And I didn't move. Because I knew. Whatever came next, there was no going back. The door closed behind him, and the silence that followed wasn't like before. It wasn't soft. It wasn't empty. It was loud, deafening, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. David stood there for a second, still, frozen, and then he said I should go. No apology, no explanation, just that I should go. He grabbed his jacket, didn't meet my eyes, and walked out into the rain. And just like that, he was gone too. I stood in the living room, barefoot on the rug, my heart still pounding in a rhythm I couldn't calm. I didn't cry. Not right away. I just stood there, staring at the door, waiting for something, anything, to make this feel less real. I called my husband. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Then I texted. Then again. Please come back. Please let's talk. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. Nothing. No reply. He didn't come home that night. Or the next. And the silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was sharp, accusing, cold. The kids started asking where he was. Is Daddy working late again? Did he forget it was movie night? Why didn't he say goodbye? I told them he was busy. I told them he'd be back soon. But every word felt like a lie. I kept checking my phone. Not just for him. For David too. Nothing. I sent one message. Are you okay? No response. Another. Can we talk? Still nothing. Days passed. And that's when the whispers started. A friend of mine, someone I used to go on stroller walks with, suddenly canceled plans. Didn't answer my calls. Didn't wave at school pickup. Someone had seen me and David together the week before. At the grocery store. Laughing. Too close. Rumors don't wait for facts. They bloom like wildflowers. Fast. Messy. Everywhere. People pulled away quietly. Little by little. Texts stopped coming. Invites dried up. And David, the one who said I didn't have to go through this alone, he vanished. He didn't just avoid me. He erased me. No calls. No explanation. Not even a goodbye. He said he cared. Said he understood. But the moment it got heavy, the moment it got real, he disappeared. And all I was left with was the weight of it all. The guilt. The silence. The emptiness. And the echo of that door, closing behind both of them. I've had a lot of time to think. To sit with the silence. To face the parts of myself I used to keep hidden, even from me. And if you're still here, still listening, I want to be honest with you. I didn't cheat because I stopped loving my husband. I cheated because I stopped feeling loved. There's a difference. A hard one. But it's real. And maybe that's not enough. Maybe that doesn't make it better. Maybe it even makes it worse. But it's the truth. I was empty. Running on fumes. Waking up every day to pour love into everyone else. My kids, my husband, are home, and getting nothing back. Not a touch. Not a word. Not even a glance. So when someone finally saw me, I didn't know how to walk away from it. I thought being seen would heal me. That maybe if someone looked at me like I mattered again, the ache in my chest would stop. But it didn't. It only shattered me more. Because the truth is, when the moment passed, when the door closed, I was left more invisible than before. More ashamed. More broken. I live with that now. Every day. The guilt isn't loud. It doesn't scream. It whispers. When I see a photo of our wedding. When the kids ask why Dad doesn't sleep at home anymore. When I walk past the grocery aisle where David once smiled at me. Sometimes I wonder, did I destroy my marriage? Or did I just put a crack in something that was already falling apart? Was it betrayal? Or just the final symptom of two people who had already stopped reaching for each other? I've tried therapy. I'm still trying. Some days I feel like I'm making progress. Other days, I sit in the car after school drop-off and cry until my hands stop shaking. There are no clean answers. No perfect apologies. No way to undo what's been done. All I know is this. It's possible to feel lonely beside someone who swore they'd never leave. It's possible to crave touch so badly, you start to confuse attention with love. I don't know what happens next. My husband still hasn't moved back in. We talk sometimes, but not about us. Not really. Just the kids, the bills, the surface. He's polite, careful, like I'm made of glass, and he's not sure if he wants to piece me back together or leave me cracked. And I don't blame him. I really don't. This isn't the story I thought I'd be telling at this point in my life. But it's the one I lived. And now, it's the one I carry. What would you have done? Have you ever sat across from someone who promised to love you and still felt completely alone? Have you ever felt invisible in your own home? Not unloved, exactly, just unseen? I'm not here to justify anything. I know what I did. I know what it cost. But I also know what it feels like to ache for connections so deeply, you start mistaking survival for betrayal. Do you think emotional neglect is enough to break a marriage? Does silence count as damage? Do you think I should have told him the truth sooner? Would it have even made a difference? I want to know what you think. Because maybe you've lived this story too. Maybe your version looks different, but the ache feels the same. Leave a comment. Be honest. This is a space for stories, not shame. And if this one moved you, if it made you feel seen or understood, even in the smallest way, subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. This is where the real stories live. The raw ones. The ones we carry in silence. Until someone finally says, "Me too." Sometimes, the heart doesn't break all at once. It breaks in slow, quiet ways. With every look that doesn't linger. Every conversation that stays at the surface. Every smile that fades too soon. You don't notice it right away. You keep going. You tell yourself this is just how love matures. But then one day, you realize you're no longer reaching for each other. You're just two people passing in the hallway, living parallel lives in the same space. That's how it happens. Not with fire, but with neglect. Not with cruelty, but with absence. So, if you're listening to this right now and something in your chest feels tight or familiar or quietly aching, don't wait for things to break. Water your garden. Speak the hard truths. Look each other in the eyes again. Before the silence gets too loud to fix. Because once someone else starts seeing you in the ways you begged your partner to, it's already too late. And just before the screen fades to black, let this linger in your mind. Neglect doesn't always look like anger. Sometimes. It just looks like absence.